Good evening. Welcome. My name is Jason Kittner. I am the Chief of Operations and Public Works Director for the City of Mercer Island. Thank you for joining us this evening to talk about the Mercerdale Park Playground Renovation Project. Joining me this evening is Paul West, our CIP Project Manager, who is overseeing this important project, as well as Chris McGarvey with Northwest Playgrounds. We hope you're sitting with your loved ones and little ones. We hope that the families with kids will be participating tonight. We have an interactive presentation tonight. After we get through a couple background slides, we have some important poll questions that we are looking for feedback on from the little ones that use playgrounds in the Mercer Island community. So we are talking about Mercerdale Park. Again, we'll talk about a brief project update. But on the left-hand side of the screen, you will see the key topics that we will discuss tonight and the all-important color discussion, safety surfacing, structure design, different play possibilities, and different types of play features. And then we'll conclude with our next steps. Under each of those categories, specific to the color options and specific components of the playground, there will be poll questions that we will look for you to participate in. And don't worry, we will make sure you have a few practice rounds to get dialed in. If you're new to Zoom and haven't used the poll feature, everyone can use it. And so you'll have some practice rounds, but we want to hear from you tonight regarding those specific discussion topics. A couple things for business purposes. This meeting is being recorded. We have an interactive Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can open up the question and answer box and type in your questions at any time. We have staff behind scenes working to monitor that Q&A box, and all of those questions can be seen by all attendees. You can also upvote questions that you're particularly interested in by clicking on the thumbs up icon that appears next to each question. As time allows, we will respond to these questions in writing or orally throughout the presentation, again, if time allows tonight. So let's talk about the playground. The Mercerdale Park Playground was installed in 2002. Playgrounds typically have a expected useful life of anywhere from 15 to 20 years. And so we are nearing the end of that expected useful life. I think it's important to note that your parks maintenance team members, staff that work on the parks maintenance team, we have certified playground inspectors, and we complete routine playground inspections of all of the Mercer Island parks and playgrounds. But the playground equipment, as part of the routine inspections, has shown that the Mercerdale Park Playground is in fact degrading and it needs to be replaced. The existing train is delaminating, as well as you're starting to see some metal wear on the existing structure itself. And so it is time to replace this playground. It was further complicated last winter in 2020 when the playground equipment became flooded. And I'm sure as many of you have seen, in heavy rains, there tends to be a little bit of a pond or a small lake, depending on the amount of rain that we get, that forms in the middle of that play structure. The subsurface drainage has become plugged or clogged with the degrading engineered wood chips that surround that play structure. So in the spring of 2020, we started to look at replacing this playground, and we received an initial playground proposal to include in the city's 2021 and 2022 capital budget process. The council approved that capital project, and the project kicked off in January of 2021. On February 8th, we had our first public meeting to talk about scoping and receive public input. And you are here tonight to provide some additional design input through our second public meeting. So as I just referenced, this is the Mercerdale Playground. This is a picture taken in the winter. As you can see, the small ponding form in the actual playground itself. This is a really interesting picture because it's important to note a few characteristics of the playground itself. As you can see, this playground has a concrete curb that surrounds the existing footprint of the playground. It also has a concrete wall that runs through the middle of the playground. This will be an important characteristic that we'll talk about here shortly, but The playground that has been proposed is to replace the playground within that existing footprint. And what I mean by that is it has to be within that existing concrete wall at the actual site. That concrete wall presents some unique challenges, and we'll talk about that in just a few seconds. Through playground design, there are many different types of play that we look to incorporate into a playground. Different types of movement, from spinning and climbing to swinging and jumping, to imaginative play, to different music and art, to sensory, and some natural characteristics. These are all different types of play that can be included in a playground design process or a new playground. And we look to include a variety of these different types of play in each playground. In addition, playgrounds also have a typical age range for the different pieces in a playground. Playgrounds usually range from 2 to 5 for the smaller kids, or 5 to 12. Those are the two age brackets in which playground equipment is designed for. With each age group and each type of play presents a different level of challenge, as well as different elevations in which kids can climb and play and move to and from different structures. ADA is a minimum standard of accessibility, and it's only one part of an inclusive playground. It is important to note that playgrounds are being used by families of different generations, all sorts of different backgrounds, and have a tremendous opportunity to create unique opportunities for families, for kids to play with their grandparents and aunts and uncles and siblings and friends from school, and just other kids they meet on the actual playground itself. It's important that an inclusive playground includes ADA accessible equipment and surfacing. There has been some questions over the surfacing that we've proposed for this playground, and we will have a specific topic to talk about that later on. But I will note that many of our playgrounds on Mercer Island have what we use as would term as engineered wood chips. Although those engineered wood chips technically meet ADA accessibility requirements, if you've gone to a playground and seen someone in a chair try and move to and from a piece of playground equipment across engineered wood chips, you will quickly learn that it is not an accessible surface. It is not suitable as an alternative for surfacing to meet ADA accessibility requirements. So therefore, in tonight's proposal, you will see a couple different surfacing options that are far more accessible and what we view as a superior surface and material for a playground. Lastly, shade is a safety feature. Myself, when I go to the playground, as you can see on my head tonight, I tend to get burned. Although we have a few months in the summer where we have warm weather, shade is an important factor and safety feature for playgrounds to include, so that as our little ones are running to and from the different pieces and getting tuckered out, they can find a cool place to rest and cool off, as well as our parents and grandparents and others who are there on the playground using the equipment can also find a cool place and shade to take cover and rest during those summer months. What we've heard to date, we have heard from the community that we want the playground to be accessible to a wide range of different users. It needs to be inclusive, provide different levels of challenge that's fun and inviting, and that colors are extremely important. We've also heard from the community that the train theme is very important. This is the train park, and we want to keep it that way. We also have heard that we have all been cooped up during this pandemic for quite some time, and we want to get this done so that our kids can get out and play on equipment. Our goal is to get this equipment completed and constructed this year so that our families can use this equipment during the summer months. It's important to be cost effective. We want to be responsible of our Mercer Island taxpayers and the funding that goes into funding this important project, and also important to take in the environmental impacts and make sure that we preserve our open space and use materials that are sustainable. So before everyone cringes, this is where we are today. This is the existing concept that has been shown and posted on Let's Talk. And this is through the conversations that we've had with the community and with the design team. That includes the train on the left, and then the structure and the different swinging components and spinning structures in the existing playground. And we'll talk about the specific functions in just a minute. Again, this is a different view of that existing playground. As you can see, we have the footprint of the playground fitting within the concrete wall. However, you will note that we have removed the middle concrete wall that ran through the middle of the playground. We've proposed to remove that concrete wall in the middle of the playground to expand opportunities for additional play equipment to fit within this tight area. Okay, let's get to the good stuff. Poll question number 1 is just a practice question. So in just a minute, you're going to see a poll question pop up. And there's no right or wrong answer here, and there it is. Which food do you like best? This is just practice. Pizza, French fries, peanut butter and jelly, ice cream, or other. Parents, if you have kids that are sitting here watching this tonight, if you can reach over and have them help pick their favorite food just to practice the Zoom poll, that would be great. It looks like ice cream is in lead, 42%, with, let's see, French fries in a close second. Again, pizza, French fries, peanut butter and jelly, or ice cream. Or other. And if you've mentioned other, go ahead and put it in the Q&A box and tell us what that is. I'm curious. Just a few more seconds here and we'll let the polling continue. Looks like we've got about 14 of 22 participants that have responded. And in just a minute, we'll close the poll here. Any last minute poll takers? All right. And the poll is closed. Great job, everybody. The ice cream is the clear winner tonight with 43% of which food we like best. I have to agree. Ice cream is far and away my favorite. Okay, so now we're talking playground. So poll question number 2 is, what is your favorite part of the existing playground? The train, the structural climber, the swings, or the spring toys? And again, the poll is going to pop up here in a second. Find your poll button and go ahead and respond back. What is your favorite part of the playground? The train, the climber, the swings, spring toys, or other? Looks like we've got about half of the participants that have responded. Ooh, we're neck and neck between the train and the structural climber. Let it go for a few more minutes here. Ooh, the climber again. A couple votes for the swings, 1 vote for the spring toy. Few remaining people to participate if they're out there before the poll closes here in a second. Again, what's your favorite part of the playground? The train, the climber, the swings, or the spring toys? And the poll has closed. And it was a very close poll. The climber barely necked out the train with 6 votes to the train's 5, but the train and the climber were the 2 favorite parts of the existing playground. Excellent. Okay, poll question number 3. What kind of play do you like best? Do you like swinging motions? Do you like the seesaw? Do you like to slide? Or do you like to spin? Again, these are different types of play that we like to include on different playground designs. They're very important, and they each have their own specific fall zone requirements for each type of activity. So getting your feedback is going to help us with this playground design so that we can make sure we include these types of play in the playground. Again, what kind of play do you like best? Do you like to swing? Do you like seesaw motions? Do you like to slide? Or you like to spin? Looks like swinging is in the lead with about just over 50% of the votes responded to. And sliding is a close second. A few more seconds here before we close out this poll. Again, what kind of play do you like best? Swing or slide, seesawing or spinning or other? Great. Thank you. Poll is now closed, and just under 50% of participants responded that swinging is the kind of play they like best, with sliding coming in a close second. Okay, so as I talked about earlier, the color selection, we have heard from the community. We recognize that colors are important with any playground that we select. We have heard that the reds, the grays, and the blacks are not a favorite of many people. And so we have come up with some different color options to evaluate, and we'll have a polling question to see which one you like best. Again, with any playground equipment, we can use all sorts of different colors. The post can be a different color from the actual structure itself, and the platform on the structure and the ramps, to the different types of colors of slides and boulders and stationary equipment. So we have a wide range of possibilities for different types of color selections for different playgrounds. And we will show each one of these four individually here in just a second, but we have come up with four different options besides the red, the gray, and the black, the existing option. Option one is a more natural color scheme. Option two is the natural color scheme with a little bit of brightness to it. So the difference between the two, really the key difference is the browns versus the, I guess I would call it a fuchsia or magenta color in this picture. Option three is the blues and the greens. And then option four is your greens with the pops of color. So here's a better picture of option one, the natural background. Again, it's the green and brown color dominant for the structure. Don't pay attention to the structure itself. We'll talk about the different components of the structure in just a few minutes. We're focusing on the color itself here. Option one is the natural color scheme. Moving to option two, again, this is the natural color scheme with a little bit of brightness to it. This is a close-up version of it. So you've got the greens as the dominant color, the ramps are the brown tones, and then the brightness of color is in the actual post itself for the structure. And then moving to option three, this is our blues and greens color palette. Where the dominant color is blues with the hints of the green throughout, the darker green slide, and then a little bit brighter green, or more of a lime green, I would say, for some of the other structures. And then finally, this is option four, is more pop of color throughout. Again, it's a green dominant structure itself, but it's got some highlighted colors throughout the actual equipment itself. So poll question number 4 is, what option do you like best? Again, the screen's going to pop up here in a second. We are looking for your feedback. There it is. Excellent. So the poll is now live. Again, option 1 is the natural scheme. Option 2 is the natural with a little bit of brightness to it. Option 3 is the blues and green. And then option 4 is the pops of color. Again, parents, if you have kids participating tonight, if you can help them out, we really would appreciate your feedback in the all-important color selection for the new playground equipment. Got about 77% of the vote received so far, and it's a pretty close contest at this point in time. Natural's at 22%, natural with the brightness is 28%, the blues and greens is a 17%, and then option 4 with the pops of color is 28%. We do have a vote for other. If you feel inclined, if you could use that Q&A box and tell us what other color scheme you might like if you feel so inclined to do. We got 18 of the 22 participants that have responded. We'll let this poll go just a hair longer. Again, we're looking for your feedback on what color options we like best for the new Mercerdale playground equipment. Okay, the poll is closed. And option 2 just barely necked out option 1 with one additional vote. So option 2, the natural brightness, was the preferred option this evening. Great. Safety surfacing. So as I mentioned earlier, engineered wood chips have been used in many of our other parks, but it is a surface that does not really truly meet ADA accessible needs. And it is also quite costly to continue to maintain over the lifespan of the equipment itself. Often the engineered wood chips require fluffing and re-topping them off every single year to keep the depth of the material adequate. So we have a few different options for consideration tonight. Option 1 is the poured in place surfacing. Poured in place, this is a picture of actually Luther Burbank Park. As you can see, if you've been to Luther Burbank Park, you'll see the poured in place itself. It's actually applied beneath the equipment itself or on the walls here in this particular case. It has a number of different opportunities with it. You can add different colors and different graphics associated to it, but it's actually a poured in place rubber material. The material doesn't migrate to and from the equipment. It stays there in place and is a suitable surface for all users. Option 2 is the use of synthetic grass. Again, this is a picture of the synthetic grass at a playground. This material can be used and is a suitable surface for accessibility. It uses sand as the infill and creates a different type of surface for a playground, different type of surface for the playground itself. And it is becoming more and more popular in this area in particular as well. One of the pieces that we have recognized and we've heard from other playgrounds that have used this material and from our designer itself is that the wear patterns around the equipment tend to show a little sooner, but the surfacing is still adequate. It just tends to see where most of the kids like to play the most in the surfacing itself. And then finally, option 3 is a mixed use surface. So as you can see in this picture, this is a combination of the poured in place as well as the synthetic grass for playground. Again, this creates different types of surfacing, different material types. It provides some unique opportunities to do some interesting graphics and make the playground a little bit more unique and specialized by using a mixed surface application. So poll question number 5 is, which surface do you prefer for the new playground at Mercerdale Park? Option 1 is the poured in place. Option 2 is the synthetic grass. And option 3 is the mixed use surfacing. The poll is going to open here in just a second. There it is. Again, 3 options for the preferred surface. Again, we have opportunities to do different things with each type of surface. Looks like the mixed surfacing is in the lead today, currently with 9 votes, 9 of the 23, with the poured in place a distant second at this point in time. We've got 78% of the vote received so far. Again, 3 options for consideration for the new surfacing at Mercerdale Park. Option 1 is the poured in place, which we have at Luther Burbank Park. Option 2 is the synthetic grass. And option 3 is the mixed surfacing. Okay. We'll let the poll go just a hair longer. Again, 3 options for the preferred surfacing at the park. 5 participants out there still. There we go. And the poll has closed. Poll is closed, and option 3 is the mixed surfacing with 11 votes was the preferred option tonight. Okay. The next topic is the structure design. I'm actually going to ask Chris McGarvey to go ahead and turn your screen on because I'm going to have you help walk us through the structure design.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. So structure design, I know we've gotten some awesome feedback from everybody in terms of really adding height to that initial design that Jason showed earlier in the presentation. On that structure, we only got up to a 24-inch accessible platform. And so, we went back to the drawing board and we said, hey, how could we add a little bit more excitement? How could we add a little bit more height to options? And so in each of these designs, 4 different options, and that's going up from a 3-foot, 4-foot, 5-foot, and all the way up to a 6-foot deck with some steppers and climbers that actually get us a little bit more elevation for different designs. But we're going to look at 4 different options. This first one gets us up to a 36-inch platform. So some really cool things. If you guys can see where the 36-inch platform is, I think the resolution on the site plan isn't super great, but Jason's mouse is kind of mousing over that deck right there. A few really fun features that were built into adding that ramp. You go up, you see this double slide with 2 different chutes. So one's a little bit narrower, one's a little bit wider. Actually allows a caretaker, a parent to slide right next to a kid comfortably. So really awesome element. There's also a few different climbing. One thing we always want to do with adding decks is activate that deck. So you can see on this deck, not only do you have the double slide, but you've got 3 other ways to access that platform. There's a balancing circuit. There's climbing squares right there on the west side that includes some buttons that link over to other features. And there's even an overhead climber. And I think there's a fun picture on the next slide too.
So Chris,
yeah,
there you go. This is the actual rendering of that site plan that we just showed, correct?
Exactly right. And you can see where the 2 canopied decks are the 2 decks that go up to the 24-inch height, and ramp extends over to the double slide that's kind of on the bottom right of your screen, and that gets us up to the 36-inch platform. And you can see the different types of linkage built into actually getting that deck. So it's really activated. It's not just a platform, but the platform actually continues that course of play into the center of that. Yeah. So do we want to go to option 2 and take a look at some of the features in option 2? So option 2, you can, this is a fit. So some of the features that are incorporated on decks are really just to give us a feel for what does the structure look like. With ADA ramps, we always want to follow ADA. And what that means is for every foot that we rise that platform, we require a 12-foot ADA ramp and then a landing platform. So each of those horizontal decks are those landing platforms, each are access up another. You can see in this case, to get to a 48-inch platform, we actually transition down to that bottom southeast corner of the site and add some other really exciting features there. In this case, we're just getting rid of, from the 36-inch platform, option 1, we're just getting rid of the overhead climber and some of the linkage incorporated on that. And instead, we go to a ramp that goes all the way up to 48 inches. A few features that are really fun there. There's 3 different climbers to get up to that deck. So again, activating the platform, bringing it to life. You also have just a small step up, a foot step up that goes to a slither slide with a feature that I really love for inclusivity. We call it the slide aside. You can see at the bottom of that slide, there's kind of a little oval that comes out. And what that is when a child's actually scoot over to a transfer at the end of. So a child in a mobility device like a walker can actually be in a safe seated position as they wait for their device to come back over. So just something that we just added recently and has been just fantastic for inclusivity. And I think we have some fun pictures of what that looks like too in rendered form. Yeah, so you can see on the back side, just opposite the double slide, we all the way up to that 48-inch platform. You can see the different ways to get on there. There's a rock wall, there's a geo climber, and then the slide that's facing south on the back side of the site. And option 3, I think, is it's going to get us all the way up to a 60-inch deck. You can see here, to get up to a 60-inch platform, we had to go in a little bit different direction than option 2. So instead of going down to that southeast corner of the site, we're actually going into the center of the area, kind of towards the entry there to the north. So the 48-inch deck changes a little bit. That provided one cool opportunity that we really like to add a balance tracks linkage. You can see on the front, there's kind of those little circles, almost that C shape. That's one of my favorite pieces for children who are really just developing that lower body mobility. There's actually handholds along that balancing circuit. So not only can you transition from one deck to the other, but it provides a great place right by the entry of the site where kids can easily really help develop that lower body mobility. The 48-inch platform then continues down to the south, and you can see just a really activated deck. That 60-inch platform has 2 slides. We included again that slide aside that I just love, along with a 360-degree slide. And that slide's actually a slight step up to 6 feet. So there's a slight step up from the 60-inch platform, and then you get to the 360-degree slide. And there's a picture. You can see how the structure in this case is continuing again, kind of to the entry of the site. You can see that gray rock climber that leads to the balance track circuit, which has the form with the beige handholds, just a piece that's really great. And then going all the way over to the 60-inch. And whenever you get height on ground, you get a little bit more challenging climbers. So this is great because not only can you access all the way to a 60-inch platform, but as you get to that platform, there's more challenging ways to get onto the piece, like those flex tread climbers, for example, that are the gray climber that you see accessing that deck. And option 4 is even going to get us to a higher point. Now this is through test fitting, really the highest point that we can get with accessible ramps. Now there's other ways to get height on a playground or in a play area itself. But this test fitting, and what we really want everybody to focus on is just the accessible portion of the structure. So what is the most accessible height that we can get? In this case, it gets us to 6 feet, which is actually pretty tremendous. There's 6 feet of ramps that are activated with lots of excitement, lots of play. The 72-inch deck gives us, again, more challenging climbers. There's 2 climbers there on the northwest side of there's again, just a little more challenging ways to get onto the structure. And there's 2 slides. One of the, you can't see the deck height there, but that is feet. So that slither slide that curves around and down to the south, kind of pointing towards the swings, that is actually an 8-foot slide. So you can see even getting up to a 6-foot deck height with ramps. There's other ways to step up the play and add more challenge to get on. We want kids, inclusivity is really about getting, providing different ways for everybody to play with the same things. So we want to provide different challenge levels for children to get to the same points, to use the same things, but just in different ways that are really key to their development at whatever stage they're in. And here's the render of that. You can see the bottom right portion of that structure is where we're getting to the really the top deck, and you see that 8-foot slide on the back part. It's kind of twisting away from us, along with the 2 climbers that provide just a little bit more challenge. The great thing about all these structure designs, and you can see as you look from deck to deck to deck, there are so many ways to get on and off the equipment. Again, we want play to be open-ended. We don't want to tell kids how to play. We want to really, take the challenge and use a structure, use a piece of every time. And we want that to change as they develop new challenges.
So thank you, Chris. Poll question number 6 is going to pop up here in a second. You have 4 options to choose from tonight. Option 1 is the 36-inch access. Option 2 is the 48-inch access. Option 3 is the 60-inch access, and option 4 is the 72-inch access. Again, we've got the visual images here on the screen for you to help. Again, what elevation do you prefer for the accessible ramp structure? Option 1, again, is the 36-inch deck. Option 2 is the 48-inch deck. Option 3 is the 60-inch deck, and option 4 is the 72-inch deck. We've got about half of the participants that have responded so far. Votes are trickling in. About halfway through the poll, and about half the people have responded so far. So again, 4 options. Option 1 is the 36-inch deck. Option 2 is the 48-inch deck. Option 3 is the 60-inch deck, and option 4 is the 72-inch deck. Just a few more moments here to round out the polling. A few stragglers out there. Again, 4 options for consideration, or you can again use the other. If none of these options are what you like, you can vote other and put it in the Q&A section as well. Just a few more seconds before the poll closes. A couple stragglers out there. There's 6 of you that haven't responded yet. Looking for your feedback on which elevation is preferred for the accessible ramp structure. Okay, the poll has closed, and option 4 with 61% of the poll prefer option 4, the 72-inch ramp access. Excellent. This is just another version of looking at it again. So option 4 in the lower right-hand corner was the preferred option tonight. Okay, we're going to move into our climbing play possibilities. Each playground has a different opportunity to include some different standalone features to improve or enhance our climbing opportunities. So Chris, again, I'm going to have you jump on here and help walk through some of these additions.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. And I might answer, this might be a good time to answer. I saw Peter's question earlier and didn't work it into the last Q&A, but in terms of play toys and age appropriateness for 2 to 5 versus 5 to 12, I think, a big part of what we're trying to determine now is what we want that ratio to be. So as we talk through some of the different activities, that's all really going to help lead us into what that differentiation is. It's still pretty much a blank canvas for us to design to. So if there's feedback on those age differentiations and how we want to design, we can totally. The one thing I will say that's fantastic about any ramp structure is that it provides the easiest accessible route of travel, which means that the youngest kids, and a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, any ramp structure is going to be very easy for them to access and get onto activity. That doesn't mean that all the features are going to be necessarily appropriate for them to use. It does provide great access and a great way to get really the littlest ones up to high points. Looking at the different types of climbers, option 1, structure additions. This again is a test fit. So we look at test fitting to say, hey, structure feel or how does an area feel designed with a certain intent? In this case, our intent is to say, hey, if we want to step up to a higher platform, not necessarily with accessible ramps, but with, in this case, we used ADA stairs. What does that look like? So you can see, I think we based this off of the original option 1. I think this is the option 1 design that we just did some test fitting around. You can see at the top left, there's that 48-inch slide that comes down with the slide aside. And in this option, we're actually saying, hey, if we take that slide away, and instead of having the slide and having the, the elements in that southeast corner of the site, the spinner that you can kind of see just a glimpse of, what if we step up to a higher platform deck? This gets us all the way up to an 8-foot deck. Obviously, a lot of different features we could do. In this case, we looked at just adding like a really cool slide, something that kids would get up to and love. The mic is actually 7 feet wide, so you can just imagine the type of fun that kids would have sliding down that. Also great ground level activities. There's sort of a maze panel under along with ways to weave under that deck. But this is an example of when you get up to, when you eliminate ramps and you get height with other ways, what does that look like? In this case, we can get feet really easily just with a set of ADA stairs. And option 2, this is really just highlighting different types of climbing activity. Height doesn't just have to be incorporated in a play structure. It can also just be a standalone climber, something that, that lives on its own in a space. So we can certainly design height and challenge into a play area with other things outside of the traditional structure itself. Lots of different structure examples to gain height. So we definitely would love to know, do we want to incorporate height in the main play structure itself, or would we like to look at some standalone climbers to get that added height and challenge? Option 3, height doesn't have to be challenging necessarily. There's ways that we could height and climbing, that upper body strength development that is inclusive as well. So you see, like, for example, options like the home dome to the left, a small climber that's transferable from a mobility device. You see overhead climbers, and having overhead climbers at different heights so that children can use them from a seated position or a standing position. So there are also different ways to incorporate height and climbing through ground-based activities and ground-based climbers. Finally, some really cool options, climbing, two of the most popular things on any playground. Items like the climbable cone spinner is cool hybrid that lets you do all of those. So again, inclusivity is about getting kids together on the same things, using it in different ways. What we love about is that it includes a children can really be in a seated position, safe, contained with the netting around you. Kids can also climb to the top. You see the one child climbing up as the climber is spinning, and there's even an upper platform that you can sit in. So an item like the climbable cone spinner provides that climbing experience in a traditional spinner.
Chris, yes, Chris, this is Paul. We have a question on option 1. What are ADA stairs?
Yeah, ADA stairs are just a set of stairs that meet standards for ADA, similar to the transfer station. There's a certain distance between step and the size of steps that make them capable for ADA. I think we know that certainly they're not the preferred route of travel to get up to an area, but what they allow for is a child or individual with some upper body mobility to transfer out of a mobility device and up a set of stairs in an appropriate way.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Paul, are there any other questions that need to be asked at this time?
No, there are not.
Okay, great. So we have another poll question, and that is, as we look to build in some additional climbing features in the Mercerdale Park Playground design, what is your preference for building that additional climbing space? Option 1 is the structure additions. Option 2 is some elevated climbers. Option 3 is the ground level climbers. And then option 4 is the cone spinner. The poll is going to open here in just a second. And again, what is your preference for building additional climbing components in the Mercerdale Playground? Option 1 is expansion of the existing structure or the main structure. Option 2 is elevated climbers. 3 is ground-based climbers, or option 4 is the climbable cone spinner. Looking for your feedback to help with this important design process. We're excited about fitting as much and specialized equipment and unique equipment into this playground to make it one of a kind and make it special. And Your preference for building additional climbing components is important. So option 1, again, is the structure expansion. Option 2 is the elevated climbers. Options 3 is the ground-based climbers. And option 4 is the cone spinner. Or if you have another suggestion, again, go ahead and put it in the Q&A box. You have something else besides one of these 4 options. Got 5 of you out there who haven't voted yet. Just a few more seconds before the poll closes. Probably our last call for what your preference is for additional climbing features in the new playground at Mercerdale Park. Additional structure expansion, elevated climbers, ground-based climbers, or the climbable cone spinner. A few more seconds here. All right, the poll has closed. And option 4, the climbable cone spinner with 40% of the vote. Option 2, the elevated climbers was a close second at 30%. Excellent, thank you. Moving to our spinning play possibilities. Mr. McGarvey, if you can talk about the accessible whirl.
Spinning is one of any kid's favorite thing. I know when my kids get on a spinner, sometimes it's hard to get up. There's a lot of really cool features that provide motion in different ways than a lot of us have ever seen in a park before. One of those features is the accessible whirl. So something that is really a merry-go-round that's been rethought of and allows 2 wheelchairs to wheel right onto the surface, completely accessible, no boundaries. There's even 2 places where children can sit in a seated position. That whole back rail provides containment. So just a fantastic piece that allows kids to play in any way they want together on the exact same feature.
And
there's different types.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's different types of whirls too. Some are enclosed. So you see the enclosed whirl is really similar to the accessible whirl, just providing a little bit more of enclosure. So you see instead of one ADA access point on, about a third of the structure, you see 2 openings on either side of the whirl. So just something, again, where wheelchairs can easily and safely roll into the site. There's seats so that anyone could be in a seated position and use the whirl, but something that spins around. And what I love about features like this is that you see this social activity where some people are riders, some people are spinners. You get a lot of social play through a whirl with people that don't even know that they're being social. It's really fantastic to see. Next is the spinner. The spinner looks a little bit like a flying saucer, is what I thought when I first saw it. It includes 6 different areas that can actually be cut out to provide a seated position. You see in both images, any one of those panels can be either seated or just a flat plane. And what that allows us to do is a child really with no mobility can easily be in a seated position. There's even strap holds so that you can actually strap a child in and keep them completely safe as it spins. So a motion device that allows someone to trip out of a seat and be in the center of the action as it spins around. And the last spinner that we're looking at today is the Cozy Cocoon. The Cozy Cocoon does a couple different things. Not only is it a motion device to spin, but it also is a cozy space. So it provides an area for children to feel safe as they're becoming comfortable with the play area. It was actually developed for children on the autism spectrum that couldn't quite didn't quite want to jump into play around. You can go on the Cozy Cocoon. It has wide openings. Because it rotates, it's not a fast spinner, think about with merry-go-rounds of old, but it rotates just enough so that a child can move around and gain different perspective of all the play that's happening around them. And I think that wraps up our spinners.
It Does. And that leads us to our next poll question. And that is, as we look to include additional spinning features at the Mercerdale playground, which option would you like to see? Option 1 is the accessible whirl. Option 2 is the enclosed whirl. Option 3 is the spin R, or option 4 is the cozy cocoon. And the poll should open here. There it goes. Again, as we look to include additional spinning features for Mercerdale Playground, what would you like to see included? The accessible whirl, the enclosed whirl, the spin R, or the cozy cocoon? Looks like we have 18 of the 23 participants who have responded. Quick responses on this one. I like it. Just a few stragglers out there. Again, what's your preference for the spinning feature, the new spinning feature at Mercerdale Playground to be included? The accessible whirl, the enclosed whirl, the spin R, or the cozy cocoon? A few more seconds here. Still a few stragglers out there who are a little shy in providing their responses. All right, and the poll has closed. And option 1, the accessible whirl, with 58% of the vote, was the preferred spinning feature for the new playground. That concludes our polling questions. And so what's next? We will include this presentation, a summary of the meeting outcome, a summary of the poll results. I understand that I may have misspoken on the color poll and that maybe there was a tie for the first choice of color preferences. We will go back and make sure we double check the video and audio recording to make sure that we get the right color scheme identified, but we will take into consideration the comments, the input from the polls tonight, invite the public to further comment on the Let's Talk page. Please share the Let's Talk page with your family and friends to go in, take a look at the updated information. We'll be working on this tomorrow to get new information posted on the Let's Talk page, and we want to hear from the community on what the preferences are for the Mercerdale Park Playground. We look to revise a playground design based off this feedback, and we'll include an updated cost estimate. And we'll be returning to the May 6th Parks and Recreation Commission meeting with an update on what outcomes we gleaned from this public input tonight and what else has been posted Let's Talk and where the new design takes us for the playground itself. At a future date, we look to go to the City Council with the project recommendation and funding considerations to get this thing constructed. Again, we would like to see this be concluded this year so that our families and kids can get out and use the playground, enjoy that sunny weather, which is, it goes quickly here in the Northwest. So that is our goal, but the design process is important and we want to make sure we get it right because, as I mentioned before, these playgrounds are in the ground for quite a while. So we want to make sure it is the right design for the community at Mercerdale Park. That is it for the slide presentation and the poll questions tonight. I will stop sharing my screen, and Paul, I'm going to look to you to see if there's any Q&A questions in the chat.
Yes, thank you, Jason. This is Paul, and I'm looking at, I'm going to just want to make sure that we go through the chat or the Q&A and address everything here. We have one comment. I think most of these are comments, but the height looks great, but I'm concerned that with the 60-inch or 72-inch height platforms, so much space is taken up that there isn't enough room for other activities. And I'm wondering what the difference in cost is. So there's a comment there. One of our first questions actually was the question about what's the balance of little kid to big kid activities on the existing design that's on Let's Talk. What I want to say is that design was a very preliminary design, and I don't think it really is germane to this conversation at this point. any new design that we come up with is probably going to be significantly different. I mean, if it's a curiosity, I think Chris could probably weigh in on that, but I'm gonna say that that's not really the direction that the red design, what I'm calling it, is really not the direction that we want to be focusing on right now. Let's see, a couple of kudos, which we really appreciate. And then I think that's just about it. I think everything else was answered. So if anybody else feels like their question wasn't answered, if you'd please re-enter it into the Q&A or just message us some other way. You know, Let's Talk has a great feature. It's got not only a place to comment, but it's got another tab right next to the comment tab where you can ask questions and get them answered there. And I'll be monitoring that now for the next 3 weeks up until the Parks and Rec Commission meeting. So I will respond to questions daily from the Let's Talk platform. So please, if you come up with questions, please ask them on Let's Talk. Then everybody gets to see them and understand what the answers are.
And Paul, we now have enabled the raise hand function. So if folks want to ask a question or make a comment orally, they can click on the raise hand icon at the bottom of the screen.
And I do have a new question. Do we see any chance for a possible water feature? It would, I'm going to ask Chris to kind of take a stab at that about in the existing footprint of the playground, would a water feature be compatible with the other kinds of equipment that we're contemplating?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And, you know, I would say the most difficult part with a water feature is really not just about the water coming out, but it's where does the water go after? In King County, especially, any type of splash pad feature has really moved towards a recirculation system, which when you invest in a system like that, it's just about the same thing as a pool. You're almost operating a pool. There's a holding, typical holding tank size is like 4,000 UV. There's there'd need to be a restroom within 100 feet of the feature. So without going too far in the splash pad possibility, I'd say one quick answer is that it does open up a whole lot of other considerations that are just a bit more complicated than a standard playground.
I see that Meg Lipper has raised her hand, and Chris, I'm gonna look to you to make sure Meg gets on and asks her question.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm on now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question is that it seems to me, I was the one who asked the question about activities under the climbing structure. And it seemed to me that was a very smart way to get height in and also get some of those activities. Could you describe a little bit more in detail what kinds of activities you could include under the climbing structure if there's more height added to that structure, please?
Yeah, Meg, that is an awesome question. And you really hit on something that's really impactful. Those underdeck activities are fantastic for young kids. You know, they're an imaginative spot. You'll see in some of the different designs, we activate those underdeck spaces with things like seats. There's something called a sling seat that we put underneath decks where the swings attached to posts. So a place that kids can just sit and play. So in any design, I would say those underdeck activities will definitely be active with either panels, areas to congregate, even things like a storefront panel, you know, that's just a little window that really stimulates social activity. All of those, any space like that we have an opportunity to activate it, we certainly will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Veronica, I see you raised your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I have a question about potentially putting equipment on the outside of the viewing, like where benches would go to view the playground. I've been at Marymore Park and they had some really neat equipment that would blend so well with the other exercise equipment that's in the park, where a parent can be doing like an elliptical motion while watching their kids. And I know that's taking a little bit away from what we were talking about just now, but I was wondering if that is all at all possible.
So Chris, I'll take the first crack at this. We do have some equipment that is actually identified that's on the outskirt of the structure itself or the wall itself. I want to say there's some like music and sensory activities that don't have a fall zone requirement that are on the outside of the playground equipment. We have not included perhaps some of the adult physical equipment in this current design, but there is some existing outdoor equipment in the park, but not right next to the existing playground itself. It hasn't been something that we have looked at in particular, that specific feature on this design yet. I don't know if there's something that comes to mind that we can look at. We can certainly talk about it and think about it. I think it's important to recognize that families, families have many generations that participate with kids at a playground, from grandparents to parents to kids and grandkids, great grandkids. So we definitely recognize that having multiple use or multifunctional equipment out there that serves many different generations is important out there as well.
I see there's another question from John about will the musical sensory equipment area be sufficiently distanced from the more active play areas?
Yeah, right now the sensory equipment is located across the walkway. So it would be kind of a dedicated area outside of the traditional use zone of the equipment. So if you think about total distance, that's about a 5-foot path. You're going to be at least 6 feet equipment away from the boundary of the play area. So you're looking at 10 to 15 feet probably away from equipment. We don't want to get it too far. One principle of inclusivity is not creating zones for different kids. We want everybody playing together. So I think one of the cool things you can do with sensory equipment is make it part of the play experience. Kids will playing music and they'll also be interacting with someone playing on the monkey bars. That child on a monkey bar might respond to the music they're playing. So there's some really cool play that can happen with things being somewhat close, but obviously not too close to create a hazard.
Chris, while you're on, there was a question from John also about whether we will have the new design audited by Let Children Play or Let Kids Play.
Yeah, most definitely. As soon as we get to a final design, certainly Mara's been involved in some of the process with some of the just options even. So she's an awesome part of our team and certainly will be involved going forward.
Those of you who are not familiar, Mara is with a nonprofit called Let Kids Play, or a consultant, I believe. She would Let Kids Play, and her specialty is inclusive and accessible play areas. And she has a whole system for doing analysis on the aspects of that.
And we have another question about what the train feature will look like.
Chris, do you want to talk about that? We didn't touch on the train feature tonight, and it's important characteristic of the park itself.
The train feature is so cool. It's a blank slate. We work with a company called ID Sculpture that specializes in designing immersive environments made out of different materials. So In this case, the train is something we've paid a lot of attention to. We actually just got the most recent concept back this morning. So, without sharing too much, I can say that the train would be an inclusive piece that would be accessible. So you could actually wheel into it. It's going to be climbable, so you can climb on it. But using all those principles of inclusivity, Mara Kaplan was actually on our meetings with ID Sculpture to think about how do we make this feature as inclusive as possible. So yeah, it will be a fantastic addition. It'll play off of whatever colors we use, and certainly can be something that just highlights the history of the park and everybody involved and help it a reality.
I see the Preschool Association has a question.
Hi guys, this is Laura Shops with the Preschool Association. One of the important things that had been brought up when we had polled our members was the addition of a fence along the busy road there. And I was wondering if that has been thought about and maybe could be a possibility of something that could come down the line, or if that's been included in the plans that we're looking at currently.
I can take that. We've asked Chris and Northwest Playground to include in their current quote the fence from the thrift store all the way to the path that comes off of 78. So it wouldn't be a total enclosure, but it would block traffic to and from the street, so that kids who head off toward the street would be prevented from getting close to the street. We can talk about more enclosure, but that's the piece of enclosure that seemed like the most important.
Absolutely. Yeah, agreed. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
And we have a couple other hands up. John.
Yeah, my question has to do with the adjacent to the current playground, pretty close actually, are I think four or five of the energy, I guess they're called parkours, structures that people are, supposedly exercising on as they walk the loop. And I think I've seen one person, maybe two, using them the entire time. I'm wondering, if there's any thought of those maybe being promoted more, or maybe even modified. I think they each have kind of a railroad tie type, wooden beams around them, making them inaccessible to wheelchairs. I was there the other day. It looked to me like it might be possible to take out, they're wood chips, yeah, but you're not going very far. I don't know. I was just wondering if those could be maybe modified, or they could be, I know it's not part of this project in particular, but down the line, I'm not sure that those have fulfilled the potential that they were originally hoped. Any thoughts on that?
I'll just say, I think that's a great topic of conversation down the road. They're, as you mentioned, they're not part of this specific playground discussion tonight, although I think it's the idea I mentioned earlier about having some equipment nearby for others to use is an interesting conversation and something we should look at. As far as all of the pieces being included in this conversation, I don't think that's I think that's a future conversation, but we can certainly look at something. I know there's one or two pieces that are somewhat nearby the playground, one in particular that comes to, that we can possibly look at. As far as promoting them more, we can absolutely do that down the road, but long-term future use for those specific pieces of equipment, I think that's a different conversation.
Phase two. Yep. Thank you.
And it looks like Emily has a question.
Well, this is actually Emily's husband, Dan Thompson. And I would just like to say that I'm, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Emily's husband, Dan. And I just want to say that as somebody who approaches a lot of issues politically, I just really feel that this presentation was really fabulous tonight. And I know that this is a very sensitive issue, and we have our parks. And I know that Paul and Ryan Daly and Jason are working on the pros plan and the recreation restart and the Luther Burbank waterfront. But I thought the presentation and the work that was done tonight was excellent. And I'm not always super positive on some of these things. So well done. I know that we haven't heard much about the cost and the budget, but I also want to reach out to Ashley and Olivia Lippens and John Hamer. I learned a lot from them. And I really think that this looks like a real positive process going forward, because anybody who's been through a parks project before knows if we don't do the consensus at this level, and then it goes to the council, and then people come out of the woodwork and there's a lot of contentiousness, then what they do is they remand it. They get freaked out. So really congratulations to Jason and Paul and Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we have a couple of repeats, Chris. I'm not sure who was first.
Yeah, wasn't sure if those folks had hadn't lowered their hands, or if you have additional questions. Meg, did you have another question?
Yes, I did, and thank you for taking it. And yes, I certainly want to re-echo what Dan said. The presentation was fantastic. The photos were great, and I really appreciate seeing everything like that. It was very, very helpful. My question just came up as a result of the question that was asked about the water feature. I understand that's very complicated and out of reach. I'm just curious about, in terms of children interacting with more natural materials. I did see a picture of a sand table that was at wheelchair height that people could get around it, and grandparents in wheelchairs and so forth could play with children. And I wondered if that might be a possible addition in terms of sensory and working with natural materials. That's the question. But I also did want to add that I really love the musical activities that you have, and I love the idea of putting dramatic play at the window, maybe a ticket window for the train, for example, whatever, under those climbing structures for little kids. It's great. Thank you so much. But the question was about the sand. If it would be easier to handle than the water, and maybe something that could be added, a feature like that, that would be inclusive and accessible.
Chris, your experience with sand or other sensory materials to be used?
I think any material is great. Certainly kids love to experience different things. My little kids, when we took them to the playground, the first few times, they were more interested in playing with rocks than actually the equipment. So, I know materials are a powerful piece of the puzzle. I think part of it is just, maintenance wise, what types of materials do we want to introduce? For example, poured in place and sand don't play super well together. Sand can be a little bit of abrasive. So part of that decision might just be maintenance wise, what are the types of things we can introduce? But it certainly is all possible. And I think different materials definitely provide some different sensory experiences.
Thank you. Yeah, my focus was on natural materials. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
All right, and it looks like someone from the Hay family has a question. Anyone there? I asked if you could unmute if you do have a question there. No, looks like we lost that. How about John? Did you have another question?
Looks like John's on mute.
All right, yeah, I tried to see if he wanted to unmute. All right, we'll go back to Emily. Did you have another question? Or I'm sorry, not actually
no.
Emily, but
No, no, I don't. I'm sorry. I don't know why it's still up, but thank you.
yeah, and just so you know, down at the bottom of the screen, if you don't have a question and your hand had been raised previously, you can hit it should be a lower hand option.
Yeah, okay. I'm done. Good job.
So it looks like John's question is, when will we see a rendering of the train? And I'm going to look to Paul and Chris to see when we can populate the rendering of the train.
I'm targeting that for Parks and Rec Commission on May 6th, and hopefully get it out a week before that so that people can see it and have comment for the Parks and Rec Commission.
And it looks like Mariana has a question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
I think we lost you, Mariana.
How about now?
We can hear you barely.
It's because I'm sitting next to John. Hamer, turn down your, we have two mutes going here. Just a minute. I don't know what that is. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Go
sorry
ahead.
about that. We've got
That's
two
all right.
different machines right next to each other. One question we had was about all the different options you showed us, which were wonderful. And thank you all so much for listening to all the input from so many different community members. But from the many different options, do any of them slow this down to the point that we would not have some sort of reopening this summer, so that, as somebody pointed out, COVID is, everybody wants to get out. So somewhere in your opening remarks, it said, hopefully, I'm hoping it's more than hopefully to get us going.
So I'll take the first part of it, and then Chris, you can talk to the specifics. But we are on a fast track. We're looking to use a purchasing cooperative that we've used for other playground equipment in the past. It's called the KCDA purchasing and contract. So the pricing has already been worked out through a public bid process. And the equipment is usually a 6 to 8 week lead time. As far as what we proposed tonight, I believe everything is still within that same 6 to 8 week time frame. Chris, I'm going to look for you to confirm that. And so our plan will be, as I mentioned earlier, our plan will be to incorporate the feedback we've received tonight and throughout this process, and let's talk and get a design updated and get this to the Parks Commission on May 6th with the anticipation is to keep moving this thing forward to get constructed by the end of this summer so kids can use it while the weather is still good. Chris, can you please confirm that it's still a 6 to 8 week lead time for the equipment that you saw tonight?
Yeah, you're spot on there. Some of it will even be a little bit faster. The only item that's going to be a little bit extended is that train feature. Since it's custom, that's going to be more in the 12 to 14 week range. The great thing about that feature, though, is literally it's going to come assembled. So we will lift that off of a flatbed and lift it into a pre-poured concrete pad onto place. So there's no installation time. Basically, truck arrives, we put it down, and then surfacing will happen directly after that. So even though the lead time is a little bit longer, it does help us with phasing and some of the other work that has to happen before that can be installed.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to give the Hay family one more chance to ask a question. Anyone there from the Hay family? All right. I'm going to assume the hand is up by accident. Any other questions before we wrap up for the night? Still got a few more minutes here. Not seeing any. Jason or Paul, do you have any final thoughts?
I see a hand up for Meg Lippert.
Oh,
I don't want to monopolize this conversation, but my question is that, let's say that the bigger structures, which take up more space, the higher structures which take up more space, are put into that area, but the spinning, which one was it? Not the spinning, one of the climbing structures, yeah, the outside cone or something that seemed to take up a lot of space too. Like if you have like a big climbing structure and then a big slide structure, like how do you conceive of fitting both big structures in, and do you get enough of the smaller structures in then too? I think that's, well, some kind of a balancing act. I'm just curious about that.
It's a great question, Meg, and you're absolutely right. It's a balancing act. So the feedback that we received tonight, we'll go back and look and see how best to fit that equipment in that tight space. And as I referenced earlier, some of the equipment has fall zones that can cross over and some do not. And so Chris and his team, they specialize in this work. And so they will find every inch of available space to fit in and piece it together like a jigsaw puzzle. And so that is the mission. That's our responsibility and task to go back and do following this community engagement process, and to, try and fit as much in there where that meets our safety regulations, and that's allowable. So there will be some trade-offs that will have to be made, but it's a balancing act as you referenced. And so we'll take the feedback and incorporate it and do the best we can.
Can I just make one more comment then?
Sure.
I guess my comment is that, if the structure winds up being the highest level, then, maybe that the big, I can't remember what classification it was in, the big cone people were climbing inside and outside of, that might have to be downsized. Would that be an option then? So that, the swings and other equipment would fit in there?
Chris, I'm just gonna assume you're gonna have to look at it, but
Yeah, no, I think you answered it awesome, Jason. You're exactly right. It's really our task to fit in as much as we can in the space as possible. Those boundaries are defined, but we can get creative. Really, we're going to take everything from this meeting, and then we're going to go to work and say, how do we meet all of our goals? How do we check all of the boxes in the best way possible? And it's going to be a little game of trade-offs, but we're definitely happy to take that challenge.
Okay, thank you very much.
and it looks like we just got a question in from Mariana about swings. We didn't talk about swings. Are those included?
Yeah, there's the swings were included in every design. So in every design we have a 2-bay swing set, so 2 belt seats, an accessible seat, and a taut seat, and that's right now in every design. That didn't leave. That fits really well in that corner, and I think we've heard from everybody that swinging is something that we really want in the next generation of equipment at Mercerdale.
great. Well, I'll close it up. I want to wholeheartedly thank you all for participating tonight. Your feedback is valued, and we appreciate you taking about an hour and a half of one of the best evenings of the year to date out to sit on a Zoom meeting with us and talk about the Mercerdale Park Playground project. Again, I'll encourage you all to continue to provide feedback via the Let's Talk page. Encourage your family and friends to participate, and keep sending questions our way. As I mentioned early on, this is an important park project that we want to see be successful, and your feedback is vital to the success of this project. So again, thank you all for participating tonight, and we look forward to seeing the new playground in the near future.